What is up, survivors? Today we're going to be talking about taming the giant queen bee. You see these beehives spread out all across the ark. You need to tame them to get that sweet bee honey, and we're going to talk about how to do that. Let's get into where to find it, how to tame it. The things you are going to need to tame this critter: you're going to need ghillie armor, a full set of ghillie armor, and you're going to need bug repellent, a decent amount of bug repellent. You're also going to need rare flowers in your last slot to tame this guy with. The ghillie armor and the bug repellent is to keep you disguised from a lot of the other bees, and the rare flowers is what you're going to use to tame this guy. So let's get into taming a queen. Alrighty, so we are out here on the center map in the redwoods, and you will typically see giant beehives out here up in the trees. These are kind of hard to see sometimes. They're easy to miss, and depending on the map, they might not be in the trees. Sometimes they'll be in other areas, but predominantly on most maps with a redwood biome, that's where you're going to find beehives. So what we need to do is actually blow this hive up. So we have our ghillie armor on, we have bug repellent, but basically we need to blow this beehive up. The queen bee is going to pop out after the beehive's blown up. We need to chase the queen bee down and feed her rare flowers to tame her. That's how this works. It can be kind of a pain in the butt, and yeah. So sometimes I'm going to pop up bug repellent. Now, sometimes these beehives don't actually have any bees in them. They'll just be an empty nest. And the easy way to tell is if you start doing damage to them and no bees come out to try to defend it, then that's usually a pretty good sign that there's actually no bees in it. So what we're dealing with is probably an empty hive. So you'll see empty hives periodically as well. Sometimes the beehive breaks, the queen bee flies off, she makes a new hive. This could also be if you're on a server that runs dino wipe. Sometimes the hive will stay there and then you'll have to find one that's a fresh spawn. But in either case, let's blow this one up completely, and just to be sure. Alright, so we found a hive out here that is actually populated with bees, and I can see them flying around every now and then when I shoot it from a distance. The thing about the little drone bees that'll fly out while you're doing damage to the hive, sometimes they'll spawn behind the actual beehive itself, so they can't actually come and get you. It's like a glitch with it sometimes. The other times it will come after you, but if you keep your distance from the bees, they almost have a lifetime, so they'll just die out before they get to you. If they hit you, they can stun you, they can knock you off mounts, all that good stuff. So you might want to keep track of what you're doing. Definitely pay attention to this, and obviously your surroundings while you're doing this. Flyers, you could melee this with dinos, you could shoot this with other guns, you could use explosives. The trick with explosives though is if you use them, you don't want the explosion to be the reason why the hive blows up, because the splash damage might kill the queen. That's the last thing you want. Outside of that, it's pretty straightforward. Obviously using something like a dire bear would be really effective with these guys too, because while you're mounted on the dire bear isn't affected by the bee stings and the debuffs that happen with them. So using something like a dire bear would be really helpful, but as always, we try to do this on foot without using anything, just to kind of show you how that part's done. But basically, we're just going to sit around here and pump some shots into this thing till it blows up, and then go chase a queen bee. And there we go. So she's coming down. Let's throw bug repellent on again. They will slowly descend. This looks like I might get really easy with this one, but these guys will descend and do really dumb stuff. They'll be all over the place. Sometimes you'll have to chase these things down sometimes. Every now and then you get lucky and they'll come straight down like this, but typically they try to come down like always. But now what we want to do is chase her down and just mash E. There we go. So once the rare, obviously keeping the rare flowers in your last slot because it's a passive tame, you basically just mash E when you get up to it, and then you'll feed it. As you can see, I mashed it so many times I named this thing EE, which seems a little odd. Anyway, once you have it, you can put it on follow if you want to, or you can just hit E to convert it into a beehive, and it'll convert it into a beehive in your inventory. So let's go back and take a look at exactly how that works. So keynotes to take away from this: you're going to have to blow the beehive up. Also, beehives are very easy to just pass up, so definitely pay attention to every little cranny. Lastly, you want to make sure if you're using explosives to blow the beehive up, that the explosives are not the reason why the beehive blows up. You can use it to weaken it, but don't let that be the reason it blows up, because you could potentially kill the queen that way. Also, bug repellent, ghillie, rare flowers, that's what you're going to need. All right, so let's go take a look at this hive. So once you have the bee tamed and you hit the obtain beehive, you'll have a beehive in your inventory. That beehive does not expire or anything like that, but when you place it, you'll hotkey it and build it like a normal building. When you place it down, you'll have to use rare flowers in order to make this thing work. The other thing to pay attention to with beehives is if you need to access the inventory of a beehive for any reason, you want to make sure you're either wearing full ghillie or under the effects of bug repellent. If not, the beehive will sting the crap out of you whenever you try to mess with it. You can open the inventory up, and essentially what you're going to do is put rare flowers into its inventory. That is basically its food source. It will slowly generate giant bee honey in that hive that you can just pull from all the time, but you want to make sure you're stocked up on rare flowers. That is essentially what you're going to do. Now, if you want to get rid of the beehive, let's say you want the queen bee, you want to do something with the queen bee, whatever, you could demolish this, and when you demolish it, the queen bee will just hang out there, and you can order it around like a normal dino. It's no big deal. The queen wild, like the queen when it's flying around, not inside the beehive, will fly around like normal. It will actually try to protect itself if you put it on like attack my target or something like that. It'll spawn the little drone bees out to actually attack for it, so it will try to defend itself, but the health on these guys is super low, so I wouldn't advise that. So really the whole purpose, well, one of the lot of the reasons for, there's a few reasons for having bees, but predominantly you're doing it because you want to get the honey, or you want to be able to mass produce honey on your own. Honey has a lot of uses. For one, the honey that this generates is going to be used to make sweet vegetable cake. It's an ingredient that you're going to need to make veggie cake. Veggie cake is going to be used to tame sheep. It's going to be used to tame Achatina. And Achatina will only eat it after you tame it. So having a consistent supply of that is pretty good. It's actually used to make some of the kibbles, specifically the extraordinary kibble. You're going to need that in some of your kibble recipes. Actually, some creatures only would prefer to have honey over anything else. Things like the Megatherium, I think the Lopleurodon. Yeah, primarily anything it's like omnivores, the bears as well will actually take honey to tame. Roll rats, you can throw honey down when they dig a hole and you can tame them that way, so you will need it to tame certain creatures. The other thing that you can use bee honey with is actually a distraction. So if you throw bee honey on the ground, a wild animal will go after that bee honey. They just can't handle it. They have to have that bee honey. So it's a really good way of getting yourself out of a really bad situation, is just throwing the honey on the ground and running, because the creatures more oftentimes than not will stop what they're doing and go after the honey and then leave you alone. So those are the few of the instances. I was waiting to see if any of this popped up yet so I could throw one on the ground just to kind of show you how that worked. But predominantly that's what you're going to use the queen bees for, is to turn them into hives to do this with. Now I have seen a lot of people be a little cool and ingenuitive with this in the PvP side of things, and what they've done is they've essentially made like a base defense out of queen bees, combining it with other things. The idea is that the small drone bees that come out of the queen bee that attack targets will knock players off mounts and things like that. So if you're able to hide the queen bee in like a box or something so that the drones can still get out while it's still being defended, drones could potentially knock players off the mounts for you. I don't really know. I've seen some people say that's super effective and some people say it's not effective at all. I think there's probably better base defenses to use in PvP, but I can also see where this is something that maybe somebody just wouldn't expect. So might be something worth thinking about. Not really going to do too much for you in the PvE realm of things. You definitely have better options as far as base defenses go. Predominantly, beehives are going to make bee honey, and that's what you're going to want. You really only need one of these guys, honestly. These guys, it's going to produce a decent amount. It's going to be able to hold a lot of honey for you, but you want to make sure rare flowers are always a thing. If these rare flowers run out, you'll walk in here one day and it'll just be the queen just hovering there, because the beehive gets destroyed because it didn't have any honey left. It runs on it much like a generator runs off of gas, like a campfire runs off of wooden thatch. That's what you're going to need to keep this thing going. All right, so I got this Dillo kind of mad at me, chasing me, right? And I have him chasing me, and I have the bee honey hotkeyed on my hotbar. I will hit this button while he's chasing me. All of a sudden, that Dillo will stop what he was doing, and you can see he went and grabbed that honey. Now, you can use this to kind of break away. As you can see, kind of grabbed that kind of fast and ran away. But you can also use this to, like, in predicaments like where you want it to run off of a cliff, or you want to lead the animals a certain way. It actually has a pretty good lead time, and let's get some more and I'll show you. All right, so where is Mr. Dillo at? Just so we can science this again. I think he ran over there. He's killing stuff over there. Anyway, throw the bee honey out. And you can see all the creatures in the area are going after that bee honey. It's got a pretty good range on it. So you can use this to lure creatures in a certain direction. This works out really well if you're trying to escape said animals, or if you have a trap for taming them and want them to get in the trap. Throwing the honey in there can be really efficient for that as well. So honey in general has a multitude of uses, but the only way to get it is from these beehives. Now you can go up to wild beehives and collect honey from them, but you won't get very much honey from them. The real way to have it passively generating on a consistent basis is to tame a queen bee. Anyway, guys, that is the giant bee, how to find it, where to tame it, what it does. If you liked the video, hit that like button, hit that sub button. I will see you guys on the next one.